Welcome back to page 121. Today I'm going to take a look at what I mean when I say campaign. I've talked about my Greyhawk campaign a lot on this channel, and it occurred to me that my use of the word campaign could vary from other people. So I'm going to show how I use the word campaign and how I use the word campaign. It has two meanings in my vocabulary, in my lexicon, and I'm going to go ahead and define both for you, and you can agree with me or let me know how you use the term and what it applies to for you. And for today, I'm primarily going to use the gorgeous Darlene map. My campaigns obviously all take place on there. So I'm going to show where I do my primary Greyhawk campaigns and then where I've done some of the tertiary campaigns and how they all kind of dovetail. So today on page 121, what is a campaign? How I define a campaign in AD&D. And this applies to most role-playing games, but I'm going to focus on AD&D with this one. And basically, to me, a campaign is something where there is an overall story that is comprehensive and continues through the years. In other words, my Greyhawk campaign started in January of 1982, and I have many elements of my campaign which have been consistently used throughout that time. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the campaigns I've done in my campaign, and that's where the difference between the two words comes in. Campaign to me means the overall Greyhawk campaign, my campaign of 40 plus years that is still going strong. Also, when I do a lesser story, a part of the campaign that's going to be 5, 6, 7 parts, I call that a campaign as well. Properly, that would be a story arc or even a sub campaign, but I call it a campaign. So for instance, I used years ago the Kingdom of Furiandi. I love the Kingdom of Furiandi. It's one of the main focuses in my campaign. See what I did there? Specifically, we are focused out of Shendel because one of our player characters is Queen of Furiandi, and Shendel is the capital. The way I did that story arc, that campaign, started back even before I started playing in my Greyhawk campaign. This is a throwback to my original campaign world, which I played starting in 1980. And one of my earliest long campaigns started in 1980, in the summer of July of 80, with the Heir of the Mark campaign. And the idea behind that was the various player characters, I had about 12 in my group at the time, the various player characters would... one of them was the designated heir of the mark. They would be the ones destined to inherit the throne of a kingdom. When I started this, it wasn't Furiandi. When I went over to Greyhawk, it became Furiandi. One of them would be the designated heir, the lost heir, kind of like Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. And Furiandi became the kingdom that they were focused on. And the way I did the campaign itself is I had the player characters who were interested in being the king. I had about 12 in my group at the time, as I said, and about half didn't want anything to do with it. They wanted to just play the game. They didn't want to be a mover or a shaker in it, so I respected their wishes. But anybody who did, I had them all throw a 20-sider, and then we would reroll any ties. Oddly enough, we didn't have any ties. And that was the order of inheritance. So the one guy rolled a 20. He was the heir of the mark. Another guy rolled a 19. He was the guy, if something happened to the heir of the mark, who would step in and take his place. The third person, who was my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, rolled a 17, so she was third in line, and so on down for the 6 people. Well, it developed as I ran the campaign. I ran it with the first heir of the mark for about another year, but he ended up, for various reasons, leaving our campaign. So I went to the backup heir of the mark, who got a new job and really wasn't in our campaign much anymore. So it fell to my wife. After about 2.5 years of existence, my wife became heir of the mark. She'd been in every one of the games to that point, which the other two couldn't say, but then she was my girlfriend. So she became heir of the mark and obviously stayed with the campaign and is Queen of Furiandi to this day for having completed that story arc. That story arc went till she got crowned queen in 1987. She started in that campaign in March of 81. That's when she started playing D&D. So it was over 6 years of gameplay before she actually claimed her kingdom. So if anybody wants to go ahead and accuse me of favoring my girlfriend or anything, it took her 6 years to get the kingdom, and she was third in line for it. So, nah. So basically, that was the idea behind my Heir of the Mark campaign, one of my earliest, longest lasting, or longer lasting campaigns. I've done other campaigns since then, including a version of Ragnarok in Asgard, which was just a ton of fun to play. That went for about a year and a half. I've adapted Towers of High Sorcery into my Greyhawk campaign, and the Heir of the Mark group went on to become the Towers group. That same group went and quested for the Towers. I have 2 existing Towers of High Sorcery in my Greyhawk campaign. These are from Dragonlance, and I took them pretty much as from Dragonlance. I tweaked them a bit to customize them in my campaign, but one of them is outside of Shendel and is commanded by my wife, who is Queen of Furiandi, who is a very powerful sorceress named Ophelia, and her character is in charge of the Tower of High Sorcery. That campaign took about 5 years to complete. And then the other campaign, or the other tower I have, is over here in the Bandit Kingdoms. Searching, oops, a little too far. And it's hard to do this with the camera and with my eye. I'm using both. Out of Stoink. Stoink is hard to point, but Stoink is down right off the river there. And yeah, I'll zoom in as best I can on Stoink. And this is the Tower of Necromancy. One of my players is very interested in having a necromancer, and he went for the Tower of Necromancy, and the rest of the group went with him, and he was kind of evil tendencies, not, horribly evil type character, so he was able to get along with the rest of the group that went questing for this tower, and he, after about a 2-year quest, did get the tower. I also did a very long-running campaign that I ran down in Sundi. Sundi, of course, part of the former Great Kingdom and everything. The county of Sundi, nice and isolated. I liked that about it, which is why I chose it. It was well away from the rest of my campaigns that had run. I ran this campaign off and on for about 10 years. Now, you're going to say, wait a minute, you've just added up a bunch of years. And there's no way you've only been playing for 40 years. How could you have this many years campaigns? Well, the answer is I run campaigns concurrently. I don't run one story where they play the same characters for 5 years. We play many different characters, many different games in that intervening time, but they are still part of the overall comprehensive campaign. And campaign in this case is the big letter C campaign, not the sub-campaign or the story arc. So properly, I should say I've done all these story arcs over the years. But generally, I'll run a story arc for 3 to 5 games on average, sometimes longer. I've done a couple of story arcs where we've played the same characters 10 and 12 sessions straight. That is not usual for our group. We like to mix it up. We like to play different levels of characters. We also play different games. So it's not uncommon, for instance, if I were running the Sundi campaign, where I would run 4 or 5 games straight, and then we would break and we would play Spellfire for a week, and then maybe I'd run a game of Traveler or Gamma World or something like that, all of which I have done during my various campaigns. How many games did each of these comprise? I really don't know. I've never tracked it that way. I could find it. I have all my notes from all these games, and I have them all labeled with the name and the date that they were played. And I have those notes going back to the 80s. So I could figure it out if I really, really wanted to. I'm not an archivist like that. I'm really not terribly worried about how many games it was. The County of Sundi campaign was one that we played very intensely. They started at first level rather, and worked their way up, and by the end of it, they were around 9th level. And that went for 10 years, and that went for probably 40 games or more. Ended with a battle system. If you look up my battle system video that I did about a year ago, you're going to see the Battle of Sundi. Well, that was the final part of my County of Sundi campaign, and I was setting up a battle system, and I decided to film it and talk about battle system in preparation for that game. So you can actually see the setup that I did with the army in that battle system video. So that was my County of Sundi campaign. One of the things I did, though, and I have a lot of things that tie my universe together. One of them is called the Ebon Tome. The Ebon Tome is my nod to the Darkhold from Marvel comic books and lately of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you've seen WandaVision and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, you're familiar with that book with the Darkhold and some of what it does. Well, I adapted it and made it the Ebon Tome. And in my Greyhawk, the Ebon Tome is this ultimate evil book, scary, and it has been, for reasons, scattered throughout all of Greyhawk, and various pages are found in various hoards, treasure hoards. The idea is that the player characters get a treasure hoard from whatever, open a chest, and inside is this page of evil. It's a one-sided page. They're all one-sided, and they are completely evil. It will corrupt the carrier, whoever's carrying it, a la the One Ring. It will corrupt you over time. So I've thrown these in as little bombs here and there for the players because they have to do something with this page. Some groups have just said the heck with it and left the page where it was. Good aligned groups feel compelled to do something with it. Well, over the years, in my campaign, we have established that the Tower of High Sorcery, which is the Tower of Magic in my campaign, that is in Furiandi, is the one that can contain the Ebon Tome without evil creatures seeking it out and that kind of thing. And the tower is just outside Shendel. So it's become standard in my campaign in the last 20 or 25 years that when I stick my players with a page of the Ebon Tome, off they go to Shendel to turn it in. The Queen of Furiandi, who is a player character, but I also use as a non-player character with my wife's permission, will often reward the adventurers with something for, turning in this page of evil and things like that. Well, for fun, I stuck one of those pages in a treasure hoard that my group got in Sundi. They were about 5th level at the time. They had to travel all the way from Sundi all the way up to Shendel, opposite corners of the map. That was a fun game. It won about a dozen games. And I had them waterborne for about 4 or 5 of those aboard ship. They met a mated pair of Kautul. They met the Dread Pirate Roberts. Yeah, he's a franchise in my universe. I think that's a great idea, so I went with it. And many other things. And that was a good example of tying the two campaigns together. So when I say campaign, my Greyhawk campaign, I'm talking about the overall story. When I say an individual campaign like the Towers campaign, I'm talking about just that story arc. I've done another campaign that's actually still going strong for 37 years now, and that is my Soul Gems campaign. The Soul Gems campaign started in 1985, and these are based on the Soul Gems, the Infinity Stones, now in Marvel. But then in the 70s and the 80s, they were called the Soul Gems. The player characters quested around Greyhawk and got these various soul gems. They attached them to their foreheads and they gained these vast powers. The soul gems characters as a group are still existent and still active in my campaign. They are about 18th level overall now. So I will just say, okay, what are we playing next week? How about soul gems? My players will say, great. They know what character it is. They know it's part of the soul gem campaign, and we go from there. So properly, my Greyhawk campaign is my campaign, and then that is my overall story, is the entire world of Greyhawk, and I am consistent with my story. People, NPCs that die at this point or that point stay dead, unless brought back for reasons. And then I do my subplots, my lesser campaigns, my sub-campaigns, and I do those throughout Greyhawk as well. So that's what I mean when I say campaign. You'll often hear me use the two words referring to my Soul Gem campaign or my Greyhawk campaign. That's what I mean. So that's it. That's enough pontificating for today. I hope you liked what you heard and saw. If you did, please like and subscribe. Please remember the Patreon. I've got that going now with a reward up called The Oath. Let me know what you think of that. And if you want to see more of The Oath, and that any kind of Patreon setup gets you a copy of The Oath. It's part of it. I don't have it set at levels yet. So jump in now and get it and see if you like it. It's a little dungeon crawl that I've started. It's planning on being a multi-parter. So that's it for today on page 121. I hope you liked what you heard and saw. If you did, again, please like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Any kind of politely worded criticism is always welcome. And I'll see you next time on page 121.